Welcome to part 3 of the mana ramp investigation here. Let's take a look at the Obedient Dead deck. Okay, so in this deck you have Silent Blood, kind of a ramp card in the sense that you draw 2 cards. You do lose 2 life, but that is a price that you may well want to pay. Very, very good card in that sense. You can also use it late game to destroy your opponent or make his life miserable, while of course feeding him cards. Aside from that, well, you have the Diabolic Tutor as well. You can go get that extra land if you need it. Some of your creatures are very expensive. You see, contrary to most of my other builds, there are a lot of 6+ drops in this deck. Liliana's Shade is another ramp card. It is in fact a ramp card because it goes get you a swamp. It's a little expensive, but it is very decent too. I run 2 of them. I wouldn't run 4 of them. I think that's a little expensive. What else do we have? We have, I guess you could call Hellcarver Demon a ramp, in the sense, not in the sense that it gives you extra mana. It's a 6 cost, and when Hellcarver Demon deals damage to deals combat damage to a player, sacrifice all other permanents you control and discard your hand. Exile the top 6 cards of your library, and you may cast any number of non-land cards exiled this way without paying their mana costs. I guess you can call it a sort of wicked, weird ramp in that sense, but aside from that, no. This card kind of ramps itself. It makes itself much cheaper. Griselbrand will draw you 7 cards for 7 life. And I guess that's it for the cards that I don't run. The Jet Medallion is an obvious ramp as well. Very, very good, especially for this deck, because it needs that ramp to get going quickly. What else do we have? Well, obviously the Liliana Shade, already talked about that. And aside from that, there's not too much else. I think, well, you can say Runescar Demon, but it's a very, very expensive ramp in the sense that it costs 7, and you can go get a land if you really need it, but you'll probably get something a little bit more enticing since you already have the mana to cast the Runescar Demon. So yeah, that's the Obedient Dead deck. Peacekeepers. Peacekeepers is another deck that I haven't unlocked yet. Not because I don't like it, but because it hasn't been on the top of my list to unlock. But let's take a look. So yeah, this deck actually doesn't have a single ramp spell. Not even a draw card, unless I missed it in the midst of all of this. It doesn't seem like it has any cards that will draw or effects or abilities that will draw you extra cards. So there's nothing to ramp up this deck, but does it need it? Well, if you look, like I said, I haven't unlocked any of the cards in this deck yet. I should just reiterate from my previous videos that I've used to play this on Xbox, so I have everything unlocked there. Switched to Steam to play so I can record, and I haven't gotten around to unlocking all the cards or all the cards in all the decks yet. Well, let's take a look here. It has 4 1 costs, it has 16 2 costs, 14 3 costs, 6 4 costs, 1 5 cost, and 4 6+ costs. And that is with 75 cards in deck. That is the standard or the default build plus the 10 cards and lands that you get from the promo unlocks. Aside from that, you can run it much, much lighter than that and make it much cheaper. And that's why you don't really need any ramps in this deck. Exalted Darkness. So yeah, this deck is actually as much in dire need of ramps or extra lands as the rest of the DLC, or as the DLC and the rest of the dual color decks are. But you do have a little bit of comforting help You have the Cathedrals of War that will give you colorless mana, which is a help, also because it gives you Exalted to help out with your whole Exalted theme, the creature situation, and so on. And there's one more thing that might help you out if you don't feel that it's a bit of a shame to use it in this way. That's the Demonic Tutor for 2. It's a sorcery that goes that gives you the ability to search your library for a card and put it into your hand. If you need that land desperately, then the Demonic Tutor is definitely a pretty good option for that. Aside from that, there's not really much else, and that's a shame because, like I said in the first video, the dual-colored decks really need those mana ramps. So yeah. The Ancient Wilds deck is another one that I haven't. I think it's the final one I haven't unlocked, but let's take a look at it. So the Ancient Wilds deck is actually not as full of mana ramps as the Pack Instincts deck, but it is full of. It does have some ramp, and it at the same time it has a lot of card drawing and creature exchanging effects, which actually serves to ramp up the deck quite a bit and speed up the process. For example, Yeva, Nature's Herald, will make it so that your creature cards can be played with flash. Normally flashed creatures cost a little bit more, maybe 1 or 2 mana more, so I know it's a bit of a stretch, but that's kind of rampish in a way. Yeah, this card as well, Carven Caryatide, it's a 3 cost that which is a 2/5. When Carven Caryatide enters the battlefield, you may draw a card, so that's another one. And in conjunction with this and I forget what it's called, I'll find it in a second, but some of the bounce effects that you have in this deck, you can definitely get to draw a bunch of cards this way. Natural Order is a way of exchanging one creature with another creature. So that's also a way of ramping a bit. You can take your Elvish Visionary, which is a 2 cost, and put in a much bigger creature for the casting cost of 4. Momentous Fall will draw you extra cards when you sacrifice a creature, so that's kind of rampish. Wild Pair will make you put an extra creature into play with equal with the same total power and toughness as the first creature you play. So yeah, there's also Fauna Shaman, which well, I don't know if it's a ramp card in the mana sense, but definitely makes you go through your library quicker. There's Pelaka Worm. When it dies, it draws you a card. What else do we have? Lurking Predators, definitely. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, reveal the top card of your library, and if it's a creature card, put it onto the battlefield. Otherwise, you may put that card on the bottom of your library. Also kind of rampish without being a mana ramp. Wood Elves is definitely a mana ramp. You have a bunch of those. I think you have 3 altogether. Primal Surge, if you get to land drop 10, then this is definitely a ramp spell in the sense that you get to just put in permanent cards one after the other, unless you get unless you draw like an instant or a sorcery or something. So what else do we have? Definitely the Elvish Visionary. What else do we have? There's also effects like Thragtusk, which will give you 2 creatures basically. First 1 creature, then it dies, and then another creature, and it gives you 5 lives. That's not a mana ramp, but it's mana efficiency in a sense. What else do we have? And then, of course, Primordial Sage. When you cast this creature, whenever you cast a creature spell, you may draw a card. That's a very, very efficient ramp as well. Elvish Visionary, when it comes into battle, yeah, it's or on the battlefield, it draws you a card, and with all the bounce effects you have, then you definitely get to draw a lot of cards by using this one. What else do we have? Like I said, the Wood Elves will actually draw you a forest card and put that card directly onto the battlefield. So that's a 1/1 for 3. Now I think this card, if this card had been in a collective might, I would definitely play it. I'll run it. Even though you can't draw a planes with that card, it puts the card directly into play. I think that's far more valuable. Or it can be. Yeah, Roaring Primadox is the guy that bounces your creatures. So you can get some kind of synergy, bounce synergy going, which will definitely help you out in that respect. What else do we have? I think there's one more here, Soul of the Harvest, 6 cost. That whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may draw a card. Pretty great as well. And in a sense, in terms of mana efficiency, you can convert your lands into 3/3 elephant creature tokens with this guy if you're up to 8 lands already. But as you'll see, not a lot of ramp spells or mana ramps, but there are a lot of ramping effects and a lot of card drawing effects and mana efficiency, creature efficiency, creature exchange, and so on effects with the Ancient Wilds deck, which makes it very, very fast, very efficient, very strong. So yeah. Finally, we come to the Crosswinds deck. So, Crosswinds is very interesting because it has a lot of card drawing abilities and a lot of ways for you to recycle cards that are in your graveyard, and it doesn't have a lot of direct mana ramp spells or effects, but it does have a bunch of cycling or card drawing effects that will make you go through your deck pretty fast and will make you make those land drops pretty steadily, I would say. I don't run this card, but Curiosity, the attached creature, it's an aura enchantment, and the enchanted creature deals whenever the enchanted creature deals damage to an opponent, you may draw a card. So that's basically that. You can run 2 of them if you want. There are the Asura Mage, which is a 2 cost, 2/1, and for 4 it makes you draw a card. That can be very, very efficient, and a bit of a sexy lady on the card as well. If you are into spellcasting mermaids or whatever she is. Let's see. Twin Cast is not a ramp card, but for example, if you have the mana for it, it can make some of your other spells more efficient, especially your more expensive spells. So it's definitely a way of making this deck more efficient. This card is much the same as man, I can't believe I forgot what it's called. Here we go, Curiosity, except that it's only 1 turn. It's a sorcery, but it affects all your creatures, all your attacking creatures, or the creatures that deals damage to an opponent this turn. So very good card, or a decent card, I guess, in that respect. Very good ramp. This one recycles one of your, or brings back an instant or sorcery spell from the graveyard. Not exactly a ramp, but a way of making your deck more flexible and consistent, I would say. Keep Watch draws you a card for each attacking creature. That could be your turn, that could be your opponent's turn. So that's pretty a pretty nice way of ramping up your hand as well. And if there's enough creatures in combat, you're almost certain that you're going to get a land if you need it. Repulse will draw you a card. What else do we... Hey, come on. Work with me here. Future Sight is a great ramp. It's a 5-cost enchantment. Play with top card of your library revealed. You may play the top card of your library. You may play the top card of your library. That means that if you haven't played a land this turn, you may play it directly from the top of your library. Very, very nice, very efficient, very decent. Sphinx of Lost Truth is a 5-cost 3/5, and it can be kicked. When Sphinx of Lost Truth enter the battlefield, draw 3 cards. If it wasn't kicked, discard 3 cards. That's also a nice way of getting those lands if you need a little bit more than 5. but at that point it might not be a problem, especially for that deck. Let's see, Tidings will draw you 4 cards for 5 at sorcery speed. Yeah, not a very good card in my opinion. Time Reversal, a pretty decent card in my opinion. It's a 5 cost. Each player shuffles his or her hand into the graveyard and graveyard into his or her library, then draws 7 cards. Exile Time Reversal. So that's a nice way of dealing with Dream Puppets, but it's also a nice way of getting some more lands. So kind of rampish, I guess. Flow of ideas. At this point, you should definitely have enough enough lands. Draw a card for each island you control. What else? Recurring Insight, also 6 cost. Draw cards equal to the number of cards in target opponent's hand, and Rebound. That means that next turn you do the same. What else do we have? Day of the Dragon. No. And Time Stretch will give you 2 extra turns, so that's 2 extra turns of drawing cards, but it's very, very expensive. At that point, you certainly shouldn't need any islands. So, yeah. But from this is in my build, I used a bunch of sleight of hands because that is a very decent ramp in my opinion. You look at the top 2 cards of your library and put one of them into your hand and the other on the bottom of your library. So that's very, very nice. You get to get those lands early if you have problem, or if you had no luck with your mulligans. Very, very good card in that respect. What else do we have in the of course, we have a Repulse that will draw you the card. Archaeomancer will recycle or bring back some of your or an instant or a sorcery card. That's not exactly ramping, but it is a way of taking your cheap cards and making them playable again if you've exhausted your hands for cards that you can actually play. There's a mana efficiency to the Talrand Sky Summoner in the sense that he produces blue drake creatures, 2/2 blue drake creatures from every instant and sorcery spell you play. So that's a nice way of not ramping, but certainly of having that mana efficiency going for you. Bribery is it's not really mana efficient in that sense unless you're playing a guy with some pretty huge creatures. So you can get a very, very decent creature for 5 and also take it out of your opponent's arsenal in that sense. Follow Footsteps will give you creatures every turn and you only have to pay for once. It's not exactly a ramp, but it is definitely mana efficiency. Future Sight, already talked about it. Panoptic Mirror is another way of dealing with the mana efficiency. Once you cast it or once you imprint your instant or sorcery card, you can play it each turn for free. Very, very nice. Very, very nice. Time Warp is another way of not only getting another turn, but also gaining another card within the span of your opponent's previous turn and his next turn. And what else do we have? Sphinx Bone Wand? No. So it's not really very well ramped up, but you do have a lot of cycling effects. You do have a lot of drawing cards effect with the Crosswinds, and it is not a deck that usually, well, it certainly needs to get to land drop 3, 4, 5 before you start seeing it work efficiently. But once you get to land drop 4, you're almost guaranteed to get to land drop 5, and from then on it should be no problem because you have most of your great spells at land drop 5. You can see in my build I only have 2 cards that are above land drop 5 or casting cost 5, and that's Day of the Dragons, which is a 7 cost, and Sphinx Bone Wand, which is a 7 cost as well. So aside from that, a lot of cheap spells. There's 14 1 to 2 drops, and there's 12 3 to 4 drops, 7 5 drops. So it's a pretty efficient, fast-paced deck, and the fact that you draw a lot of cards make it really efficient. So yeah, those were the 10 decks of the original builds. As you can see, there's much more efficiency in the monocolored decks than there is in the dual colored, and I think Wizards and let me look it up really quickly. Uh, I don't know why I never remember it. It's almost embarrassing if I gave a shit. Well, I kind of do, or else I wouldn't be looking it up. Um, it is called Stainless. Yeah. Let me just see if yeah, we're still recording. I think Stainless and Wizards kind of dropped the ball on the dual-colored lands, especially because it took a while or dual-colored decks. It took a while for them to give us more than the one dual-colored deck. And in the previous games, we had dual-colored and tri-colored decks from the get-go, pretty much. So it was kind of disappointing for me to see that that when they actually give us 5 more decks, that they screw up the mana algorithm and they drop the ball on the whole. Well, you could deal with the mana algorithm if you gave us cards to ramp up our decks a little bit more. Imagine Soul Ring in the Izzet deck, or imagine some kind of like ramp, or just reuse some of the medallions for the dual colored decks. Just have the decks have one of each color. That would really help out a deck like the Mindstorms deck. So yeah, I made these videos pretty much to show you guys how big a difference there is between the decks and in terms of mana efficiency. So I hope you liked it, and I would love to hear you guys' comments on the different builds. Like now you've seen the way that my different builds are put together, and you can also see the way that I use and the way that I don't use the available mana ramps. How do you guys use it? And one thing that I would find very interesting is that for those of you who play Paper Magic or have played the previous iterations of the Duels of the Planeswalkers, how would you deal with the mana situation if you had some kind of power in the creative process of putting these decks together before releasing them to the public? I would be very much interested in hearing your opinions on that. So yeah, again, thanks for watching. I hope you liked it, and I'm multeyemeteor. This was Magic 2013 looking at the ramp situation. Laters!